So a woman was at her hairdresser's getting her hair styled for a trip to Rome with her boyfriend. And she mentioned this trip to the hairdresser, who responded and he said, "Rome? Why would anyone want to go there? It's crowded, it's dirty. You're crazy to go to Rome. How are you getting there?" She said, "Well, we're flying Continental. We got a great rate." He said, "Continental? That's a terrible airline. Their planes are old, their flight attendants unfriendly, their flights are always late. Where are you staying in Rome?" She said, "Well, we're at this exclusive little place on the river," and she told him the name of it, and he said, "Oh, no, I know about that place. Everybody thinks it's going to be special, exclusive, but it's a dump. You know, it's the worst hotel in the city. The rooms are small, the service is terrible, and they are overpriced. So what you going to do there in Rome?" "We're going to see the Vatican, and we hope to see the Pope." He says, "You and a million other people. He'll look the size of an ant. Good luck on this lousy trip of yours. You're going to need some." So a month later, she comes back. She's been on a trip. She's back to the hairdresser again, and the hairdresser asked her about her trip to Rome. And she said, "It was wonderful. Not only was the flight on time, but we got a brand spanking new plane. And it was overbooked, and they bumped us up to first class. The food and wine was wonderful. There was a 28-year-old flight attendant who waited on me hand and foot. And the hotel was great, too. They had just finished a $5 million remodeling job, and now it's a jewel. Finest hotel in the city. They, too, were overbooked, apologized, and gave us the owner's suite at no extra charge." The hairdresser muttered, "Well, that was good, but I know you didn't see the Pope." And she said, "Well, actually, we were quite fortunate, because as we toured the Vatican, there was a guard that tapped me on the shoulder and explained that the Pope likes to meet a few of the visitors every once in a while, and if I would like, I could step into this room on the side, and that he would personally come eventually and greet me." So 5 minutes later, the Pope walked through the door, shook my hand, I knelt down, and he spoke a few words to me. What did he say? He said, "Where did you get that lousy hairdo?" I hear revenge in that laugh. So today I want to talk about buying and selling, and that in every person's life and throughout their life, they are forever buying and selling. And really what we buy with our dollars is really not nearly as important as what we buy with our minds and what we buy with our heart. You know, we buy ideas, we buy opinions, we buy concepts, and these basically are the factors that mold and shape our life. They mold and shape our values, our perspective, our outlook, our consciousness, and they shape our lives. And I think we have to ask ourselves, well, how much light of the light of God do we allow to shine into some of the things that we buy? And by, I'm talking about internally, not just externally, you know. If thought is really creative, and thought is creative, that's been established scientifically, that every thought carries an energy with it, that we are creating our reality through our thinking and dominating thought, then our thoughts really do affect the experience that we have of this life, based on what it is that we have bought into in terms of our beliefs and our ideas and opinions about life. And it's been said that selling is the art of persuading others to want something more than what it will cost them. Okay? And that definition applies not only to things that are tangible and physical that we would buy in our world, but it's really talking about intangible things as well. I mean, even when you buy, let's say, insurance or life insurance, you're really it's a transaction of paper, and what you're really buying is a state of mind. You're buying a state of mind that brings or carries with it a certain amount of peace, that things will be taken care of once you depart. It's been said that the key to successful selling is realizing that you are basically selling a state of mind. That's what you're selling. And that's all you really can sell, is a state of mind or belief. That the thing, whatever it is that you're wanting to sell, will prove to be more useful and to be more valuable than whatever the sum of money or whatever it is that you're exchanging with it. And so what is sold basically comes down to a belief, not necessarily a thing. And we all recognize that through radio and TV commercials and various things like that, they're really selling a belief or a state of mind. They aren't selling soap or perfume. You know, they're selling the belief that that soap or that perfume is going to make you cleaner, make your skin softer. It's going to, make you more fragrant, more appealing, more attractive, make you feel better about yourself, whatever. There's something that's being sold which is a state of mind essentially. And so what we buy is really the essence of usefulness of a thing, because we can't really know its usefulness until we have actually begun to experience it. So we buy something and then we find how useful or not it is on the basis of our experience of it, okay? So we have to distinguish between, really, in life, what's useful and what's not useful. It's just like food. We buy food, go to the grocery store, and there's all this stuff on the shelf, and we have to decide and distinguish what's useful and what's not. And so there are those things that we buy that are nutritious, that we know are nutritious. We've learned that they are. We've experienced that they generate energy and fuel for us. And then we've also have the choice of the other kinds of food, the Cheetos and the Fritos and what gets labeled the junk food kind of thing. And so, we have to make that distinction. And the same principle really is what feeds us in our mind and heart. What is it that we're buying off the shelf in all the different areas of life? We've been sold ideas about life from the time we were born, really, and learned the language we spoke. Basically, we're told by all of those who have been around us through life, well-intentioned, certainly, the things that we've learned and been told about by our parents, by our siblings, our friends, our neighbors, teachers, ministers, on and on. And maybe we didn't buy all of it, but we certainly bought some of it, and some of it was valuable, some of it was useful, and yet some of what we bought into along the way was somewhat disempowering. Some of it was not necessarily constructive, not necessarily useful. And so every one of us have bought into ideas about ourselves, and we're still buying into ideas about ourselves. They create our self-image, our sense of identity, what have you. Every one of us has bought into ideas about life, some useful, some not necessarily useful. Every one of us has bought into ideas and beliefs about relationships, some useful, some not. Every one of us have bought into ideas and beliefs about death, some useful, some not. Every one of us have bought into various religious beliefs and concepts, some useful, some not. And every one of us have bought into various ideas and concepts about God, about Jesus Christ, some useful, some not. I couldn't buy in when I was growing up, and I was fairly young. I couldn't buy the idea that a person was born in sin. And that's just an idea or a concept that I couldn't buy. That before you've taken your first breath, you're already somehow guilty of something. Some of you perhaps have, had those kinds of things too. I also could not buy the idea that some said that if you're not Christian, you're going to hell. Couldn't buy that. I couldn't buy into a God that was like that we're all a creation of God. And so there are various things, and you could think of those that are yours, that you didn't buy into, and for whatever various reasons. And Jesus gave us kind of a rule of thumb when we're assessing, what to accept what's useful, what's not useful. And the way he said it was simply, by their fruits you shall know them. By their fruits. And we're not just talking about the quality and the character of a person, we're talking about the quality and the character of any thought, any idea, any concept, any belief. Does it feed you? Does it energize you? Does it give you life? Does it feel right? Does it resonate within you as a spiritual being? Or does it somehow drain or deplete or take away? And we all have that capacity to feel our way and to know the truth. Because the truth will set you free. In other words, it sets free these life energies in you that feel like you're connected to others. And so the whole idea here is that, is it useful? Is it productive? And is it constructive? Very important. The nature of God, we say, is good. The nature of God is good and goodness. And that means useful, constructive, valuable, empowering, all of those things. And we should always ask the question, then, is this useful? Is this idea that's being introduced to me, is this thought or concept one that is empowering? Does it have light and love in it? Is it something that I really want to buy and believe in? In the world, you will always have put in front of you for sale to buy a variety of thoughts, opinions, ideas, and beliefs and concepts all through life. It doesn't stop. It doesn't cease. It's always the opportunity to learn more and to know more. And so there will always be more of these perspectives and ideas and opinions, religious concepts as well. And some of them need to be left on the shelf. And some of them you will know to embrace. But that's a continual journey and an unfolding in every person. Some of you are familiar with the name Og Mandino. Og Mandino is a dear friend of mine. He came to this ministry a number of times to speak. He wrote books in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Some of you are familiar with his writings. He passed on in the 90s, and he's just a beautiful soul. An author, and anyway, he had like a trilogy of books, many books, but a trilogy that had to do with the greatest this, the greatest that in the world. And so he wrote a book called The Greatest Secret in the World. He sold over 1 million copies. He had a book called The Greatest Miracle in the World, sold over 2.5 million copies. But probably the one that he was known most for is in the circle having to do with people who are in the field of sales, because they'd always give it to their fleet or their trainees or their team of salespeople, and it was called The Greatest Salesman in the World. And people loved to experience Og Mandino when he came to speak because they had been so impacted by that book, and it spoke to them. And toward the end of the book, you come to find out that the greatest salesman in the world actually is Jesus Christ. And it's true that Jesus was not only a master teacher, but was a great salesman. And he meant that, and I mean that with the greatest respect. He came and sought to sell humanity on what he knew to be the truth about God based on his personal experience. And he didn't come to try and sell himself, you see. It was all about selling the experience with God. And he said things like, I of mine own self can do nothing. It is the Father within that doeth the works. He said, if I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true. Interesting. He said, the things that I do, you can do also, and even greater things than these, if you believe. And he said, to believe in me is really not to believe in me, but to believe in him who sent me. Made those clear distinctions. So Jesus was selling basically a relationship with the divine, a relationship with God, and the possibilities and the potentials that exist out of that relationship that can become then a reality in your life and part of your experience. He was seeking to inspire a belief that we could also have a first-hand experience of oneness with God, a first-hand experience of God moving and expressing through us. And he certainly taught us laws and principles that were important to learn and to live by as well. Speaking of, how important love was, the greatest commandment, the importance of forgiveness and all of these things. But he said throughout the scriptures things like, you are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. You can be one with God as I am. Matter of fact, he prayed those prayers that we experience the same oneness that he had. You can find them in the scriptures. And so when we buy into those ideas, and I mean really buy them and invest in them, there's a shift that happens in our life, really. We cannot remain the same if we really invest in them. Not just buy them and put them on a shelf, but invest in them is a powerful thing. And so many of us along the way kind of sell out on really going into the depth of that. And that's part of our journey. Jesus' main selling point, I think, and you may differ in that, but I think one of his main selling points was, again, this idea of experiencing God. He said that God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. And we know that, we were told that the Spirit of God dwells within us, dwells within all of us. It's waiting to be awakened. It's waiting to be experienced. You know, someone was given a book to read, and it was a book about all the spiritual laws and principles that lead to a happy and successful life. And it was contained in the book. And after reading the book, a person said, I read the book and nothing happened. I read the book and nothing happened. It's more than just reading the book, right? It's kind of like reading a cookbook doesn't make a person a good cook. I know it wouldn't work for me. So you have to get into the kitchen, you have to start cooking, you have to start experiencing. And, you know, Jesus himself talked a lot about buying and selling. And this whole idea. And he talked about buying and selling in relation to the metaphor of the kingdom of heaven. And if you remember, he said that the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God is within you, is in your midst, okay? And so when he was talking about it just not being a place, but actually a state, so that there are heavenly states, you know, and higher states of being that you can move into that allow you to experience dimensions of heaven without having to die. And the old concept is you have to die in order to experience heaven. And that's not true, because Jesus himself and many masters and mystics and teachers through time have told us, no, you can actually step into heavenly states, higher states of being in the here and now. You may not be able to maintain and sustain, but you can get a taste for sure. And they sought to teach us because they themselves had gone there. And so we have Jesus really trying to do the same thing. And he said that we are to value those higher states, those heavenly states that are referred to as the kingdom of the mind and heart. And so he said, with a couple of snippet parables that you're familiar with, he said, the kingdom of heaven is like unto treasure hid in a field, which when a man found, in his joy he goes and sells all that he has and buys the field. Now, keep in mind that many people take that literally and think that you have to sell everything that you have tangibly. It's not what really necessarily is being said. What he's saying is that because everything he talked about had to do with an internal dimension, what he's saying is that everything, what one needs to sell is really all the old ideas, all the limiting concepts, all of these opinions that have pulled you down, held you down, that are not the truth of you. And that's what you have to sell. And now step into another field, a field of possibility, a field of truth, a field of light and love. That's where you're meant to live. And that's what he was talking about. In another parable that was very similar, that you're familiar with too, he talked about the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who on finding one pearl of great value, a pearl of great value, went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, it's not saying get rid of everything you have. It's just saying that really external things, he was saying, are secondary to the internal. You have to value it. It has to it puts importance on that sense of heavenly states that one can have. And there are degrees of buying. You know, degrees of buying. There is buying without applying. And Jesus talked about that too. And the way he talked about that and made that very clear was in a parable that, again, you're all familiar with. It's a very simple parable. It's the parable of the sower and sowing seeds of truth. All right? And so the truth and seeds of truth about higher heavenly states called the kingdom are bought in varying degrees. Okay? So certain things that have value you need to buy. Certain things that he was offering, he wanted you to buy into and embrace. So some seeds fell along the path and the birds ate them. And those are the individuals who really never had a clue or never grasped for a moment really the truth of who they are. The seeds of truth. They never had an interest. They never looked that way. That would not fit any of you by any means, unless it fits a certain time in your life. And then certain truths or seeds fell on rocky ground, had no depth. When the sun came out, it withered. Okay? And so it's the idea that first blush, we love it. Oh, this is great. This is wonderful. We went to this seminar and we're charging out the door. We're going to, really live the life. But we don't have a depth to the soil. And the first problem comes along, or we get distracted. Basically, it's rocky ground. It doesn't stay with you. There's no depth. And then some fall among thorns, and that's for the person who, they've learned the truth, and they have it, but they just get beaten down by circumstances and situations in life, the thorny things that happen that just kind of allow a person to drift away, and it kind of like smothers out that which is the seeds of truth. And then, of course, there's the good soil, and the good soil brings forth 100-fold. Because one has really embraced it. So in every person, it's saying that there is buried treasure and there is a pearl of great price. But we have to buy the field. We have to own it. We have to invest in it. It has to become important. As he said, it was a pearl of value, and you have to put a value on that. A person must understand that for the believer to come into the kingdom must come into the consciousness of the believer. It's important for you to get that. I'm going to say that again. For the believer to come into the kingdom must come into the consciousness of the believer. Some of you are familiar with a movie that was one of my favorites. It wasn't that long ago, I don't think. I don't even know how long ago it was, but the movie was Seabiscuit. And many of you probably saw the movie, and if you didn't, you ought to go rent it. And even if you saw it, you ought to go rent it and see it again, because it's a great, great movie about a horse that became very successful and famous. And actually, it's a story about hidden treasure. If you look at that story, everywhere there's hidden treasure and it emerging, that buried treasure coming to the surface. There's a horse that had been given up on by everyone. Didn't look big, didn't look like you could handle it, but kept surprising everyone, given a chance. There was a jockey in the story that was filled with anger based on his past and being beaten around by life and the circumstances. There was a trainer who just had not ever found his niche, his opportunity had not come to him. And there was even an owner who was stuck in the sorrows and the feelings of loss and abandonment at that time in his life. And the story just goes on to show that you can be beaten down, but you can't be counted out. And all of those characters came together in a really inspiring story to show that we can all discover buried treasure within life, within ourselves. It starts there. And I remember when Diane and I went to see the movie. We don't get to see a lot of movies really, but it was very special and memorable to me because I loved it, and so did all the people. And it was a full theater. A lot of times you don't go to a theater and there's a full theater. It's pretty neat when it is full. Especially, and it's inspiring, because at the end of the movie, everyone remained seated and just applaud with robust. And it was very powerful, because basically everybody got that was their story. Everybody got that, there really is buried treasure. There really is a pearl of great price within them. That they were like that horse, and like the jockey, and like the trainer, and like the owner. There was something wanting to be discovered and celebrated. And it's a great story, and we bought it. That's why they applaud. There's a Katharine Hepburn, who was a famous actor. I always enjoyed her, and a few years before she passed on, or actually about the last year, I think, prior to her passing on, there was a Pulitzer Prize winning biographer that met and interviewed with her and asked her some questions. And she was always a person that was, her own person, comfortable in her own skin. And she had established some things that she had bought into about life. And it was interesting. I'll just share a few things from the interview, her ideas and beliefs. She was asked about retiring, and she said, actors shouldn't walk away from the audience as long as the audiences aren't walking away from them. As long as people are buying what I'm selling, I'm still selling. And as for those stars who bemoaned the hardships of their profession, the impositions, the loss of privacy, it rankled her. She said, these actors who complain in interviews about 12-hour days, you sit there for 11 of them. It's not as if you're carrying sacks of feed all day. I love that. She said about those actors who got upset about the press following them, taking away their privacy out of the public, she said, if you don't want to be a public figure, don't pick a public profession. It's that simple. And she believed that actors receive too much attention and respect. She said, let's face it, we're prostitutes. She said, I've been selling myself, my face, my body, the way I walk, the way I talk. And so she was really candid. And when asked the question, so what do you think it's all about? Life, its purpose, and what we're doing here? Without hesitation, she said, to work hard, to love someone, and to have some fun. And if you're lucky, you keep your health, and somebody loves you back. It was a great answer. And one of the last questions that I share that was in that interview, when talking about death, she shared this. She said, I don't really believe in heaven and hell, but in the here and now, and that we are meant to live in such a way that we can hope there is always something better than what we currently have. I believe how I act today will affect the way I am tomorrow. And she didn't mean, I think, a heaven and hell in the sense that she just hadn't accepted what